This year, I'm putting $1,500 towards all of my clients' purchases, so if that sounds good to you, send me a message. In February 2024, last month, the government made changes to the first-time homebuyers program, allowing those eligible to save up to $8,000 on their first purchase. You may have known of this program as it has existed for a while, but the change they made recently allows more properties and more people to take advantage of the PTT, property transfer tax, savings of $8,000. The change they made is it only used to be up to $500,000 for your first purchase, which in the Vancouver area, people were kind of laughing at that because there's not many properties that are $500,000 or less. So this change allows people to save that same amount, $8,000, up to an $835,000 purchase price. That allows now, growing families, young families, people looking for 2 bedrooms, entry level, 2 bedrooms in the main Vancouver area now also get to save $8,000 on property transfer tax. Now, there are rules and qualifications you have to meet aside from just being this is your first home. And you can shoot me an email to see if these kind of things apply to you. And we can talk about how much you can save. And if you watch my most recent video, you know that they also got rid of another incentive that allowed the government to lend you 5% of your purchase price. So they kind of took one incentive away that wasn't being used as much. I think this is okay. And they made this incentive to avoid PTT a little bit better. It didn't make it better, but it allowed more people to make use of this. This one that they got rid of, essentially you could borrow 5% from the government. When you sell your property, you have to pay that 5% back, even if your property appreciated. So you might actually have to pay the government more than what they gave you in the first place. Again, not enough people were using that one, so they threw it in the trash. Really quick, just to give some info on what you're actually saving on, PTT, property transfer tax, is a tax that, you get taxed anytime you move a title from one person to another person, and the buyer pays for it. The seller does not pay property transfer tax. You can pause the video here if you want. This is how property transfer tax is calculated. So technically, if you bought an $835,000 property, you would still have to pay PTT minus the $8,000 that you're exempt from, but it's still $8,000 in tax savings nonetheless. So now that we know where the savings are coming from and kind of how much you're able to save, what are the requirements? I'll link the official government page below so you can scroll through it yourself, but I'll list off a couple here. You must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. You must have lived in BC for at least a year before the purchase or filed 2 income tax returns as a BC resident within the last 6 taxation years. You cannot have owned a property anywhere else that was your principal residence ever, anywhere in the world. And the property you're buying must only be used as your principal residence. So you can't use this if you're buying it just to rent it out as an investment property. It must be valued at $835,000 or less. It needs to be less than 0.5 hectares or 1.24 acres. And if you can say yes to all of those, then yeah, you can save and be exempt from property transfer tax on the first $500,000 of the property, which is $8,000. And so how do you actually apply this to make sure when you buy a property, your agent knows, the mortgage broker knows, the lawyers know? How do you make sure you're not paying it? At the end of the day, the savings will usually come through your mortgage broker and lawyer as the deal nears completion. That's when they need to be talking about it. It's always good to let your mortgage broker and realtor know that you're taking advantage of this. They should probably know and ask you the questions, but just to be safe. So this means after you have an accepted offer on a place and most likely subjects are removed, which means the deal is firm, that is when they should be taking care of it, your mortgage broker, the lawyer, in the back end. So technically, before you start searching, you don't need to do anything to be able to save money on property transfer tax. Just make sure that those things you're eligible for. And also, this is a very important one. If you're buying a brand new home, you can actually avoid property transfer tax altogether up to $1.1 million. So you could save a lot of money actually off property transfer tax off a $1.1 million home. But again, this is a brand new home, which means brand new homes, you also pay a 5% GST tax on new home purchases. So you will pay a little bit more on that, but you'll save more money saving from PTT exemption. So I'm actually created a separate video on if you're buying a brand new home, how to avoid and how much you can save avoiding property transfer tax with a new home purchase. I'll put that video up here and down below. So if you're thinking of buying at some point in the next while, send me an email below. Even if you're not quite ready, we can always talk about where you can save money. See you in the next video.